We should play that one more time. I like that. I like that intro a lot. I'm gonna play it one more time. Yeah, I'm gonna play it one more time. Yeah. Boom! I love that intro, man. Every time this gets me hyped. I hope you guys are getting hyped out there. Thank you for coming in. We got Orlando in the house. We got Maine, Portland, right? We got Mo, St. Louisiana. We got Austin in the house, right? I'm going to bring up in a second for everybody to listen to. Singapore's in the house. Thank you for being from Singapore, watching from us. Thank you for being up super late. I appreciate that a lot. Hello, Chris. How you doing, brother? I'm going to put these up here right now. While I put some of these up here, though, we're going to have a great show tonight. I'm loving about this topic. This is kind of the in thing right now, right? The norms coming forward, virtual show calling. We got a perfect caller with us, Lada Massey from Edge Factory. She's going to be here tonight with us to talk about what she's been doing in the industry, where she sees it going, kind of how we're doing things, what you guys should be looking out for as techs out there in the world. But you know what? I'm talking too much. Let me bring in Austin because he's way better at this than I am, and I'll keep chatting with you guys away here. So I'm going to bring in Austin Jackson, the man, the master of words, Austin Jackson.
What's going on, AV Educate? Woo! What's going on? Hey, first and foremost, I need y'all to jump in on the comments and tell me if Omar needs to bring me in at the same time when he comes in after the intro, because we both need to go boom at the same time. The intro gets me hyped every single time. So, hey, shout out to everyone who's tuning in tonight. Megan, I see you from St. Louis. I see we got Singapore in the house, Boise, Idaho, Orlando, Miami. Actually, Orlando is showing more love tonight. Omar, you in Orlando, aren't you?
I'm in Orlando. You're in Orlando. Our
yes,
special guest tonight's in Orlando.
More in Orlando. So I'm already looking forward to tonight, and I already know it's nothing but gems coming across tonight. Do you want to give the intro, because life has changed so much, or what we expected as our live face-to-face events and how shows are called and things of the sort? So we've been talking all 2020 about the pivot. We've been talking all about how we've been making a transition over to virtual. Let's get into the nitty-gritty and let's talk about how this is done, why things are done the way that they're done. So without further ado, I'm going to let you introduce the guest, Omar.
Oh, man. So tonight we got Laura Massey, who's actually technically today, she was my boss this morning. We were doing a stream. She comes from Edge Factory. She's been doing this. She's honestly one of my favorite producers out there. Honestly, she comes on show site. She's prepared. She emails me ahead of time. She gets me the content I need. She gets me these really cool, they're called lookbooks, which I really appreciate, because when I'm doing my shows, a lot of times I get these elements and I got to kind of figure out what's what. I get a lookbook saying, hey, here's all the elements. They're in this folder for you, the inks folder, right? And then I get this image saying, this should be like what preset 1 looks like, what preset 2 looks like. And so like I have a very quick reference. She'll come in, we get it done the day ahead. We come in and the day of, she comes about 2-3 hours a little earlier. And everybody does this a little differently. This is the way that I've worked with her so far that I thought has been great. She'll sit with us. She'll kind of communicate with us what's going on, do some real quick chest with us with the audio, with the records, the basics, right? But what I enjoy the most is that she's communicative, and I get an agenda and I get a list, and if it gets updated, it's not an updated email, right? Because that's a lot, but it's a link to a Dropbox which has all the information. So I'm getting, hey, update, check, and I click on the link and I go to that update and boom, it's there. I'm not getting 1,000 emails with a ton of updates and I got to be like, okay, when was this sent? What time was this sent? What day was this sent? No, it's like, hey, here's an update, real quick what I did, and then here's the Excel with that update. So I get like a generic every Monday, a list of things, and then in between that, what's going on. But again, I'm talking a lot here, right? Let's just introduce her. Our special guest tonight, the myth, the legend, the soon-to-be legend, right? Lara Massey.
Oh, wow, that is quite an intro. Thank you.
He gave your whole workflow as your intro.
You're like, put me on the spot. I was like, I don't know how to really just do this, so I'm gonna wing it. Wing it like a nerd.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Just to give everyone a quick shout out. First of all, thank you, Omar and Austin, for having me on AV Educate. Thank you guys for having me with you guys today. I'm super looking forward to having this chat with you. To give you a quick little background, I actually started entertainment very young. I insisted that I wanted to be on stage performing at 3, and I was told I was too young, so that I could come in and do it the following year. So I was allowed to perform at 4 years old, starting in the Nutcracker. And from there, my love of the theater and musical theater just grew exponentially. I've done music theater, I've done dance, I've done choir, always a performer, right? But I have a oldest child syndrome, so I like to be in charge. I like to be the boss, and you don't always get to be the boss as a performer. Omar's like, yeah, it's accurate. So you don't always get to be the boss as a performer. So when I started going into school, I actually ended up going to UCF and doing the newer program now at Rosen College that's for entertainment management, and that's what I got my degree in. And I've been with Edge Factory. I was working at Disney during that time, actually in attractions and operations. And I really wanted to get more so into entertainment. And I actually did an internship with Edge Factory in their live events area. So not really so much anything that we're doing right now, right? But it opened this door where I actually left Disney, work at Edge Factory full time. And I have been there since 3 years and change right now. And I have kind of moved up the ranks. I've learned so much from everyone around me. And that's kind of always been the nature of my game is I know some, and I know enough to be dangerous. And I highly encourage anyone that is a tech, a show caller, anyone, always be at least familiar with everything else that's going on around you so that you know at the very least, if somebody else that's working with you knows what they're doing and whether or not maybe you have to step in or ask a couple more questions or what have you. So far, I've worked with Omar in the last couple months or so, and he's been super great. So kudos for that. I'll give him shameless props. But it's one of those things where virtual show calling is a lot of preparation, right? It's a lot of what Omar, thank you so much for that intro. A lot of what I do for the techs is the same thing that I'm doing for the clients. And that's not just virtual show calling, it's show calling in general. It's a lot of pre-production. It's a lot of communication. It's making sure that I am understanding the theme, the message, the story that our clients are trying to tell. Because I realistically, I work with a lot of corporate clients. So it's not always necessarily a fun story for me, but it's a really meaningful story to them. And I need to make sure that I understand it and I can interpret it in a way that's going to be the best thing for their audience. What that means for the other side is that I need to be somewhat aware of like the tech pieces of it and somewhat aware of the graphics and how everything works and making sure that I'm not over promising, under delivering ever on accident. So I'm a big fan of collaboration. And again, Omar can kind of attest to this because I made him sit on the call with me the other day just to make sure that one of our speakers wanted to have this idea, and it's super cool, about kind of doing an interactive PowerPoint type thing. And I won't get into too many details, but because that hasn't happened yet. But it's one of those things where I was like, this sounds really cool. I want to make sure that we're executing this to the best of our ability and making sure that we are covering all of our bases and it's doing what it needs to do, right? Virtual show calling it's unique in that your audience is the same and they have certain expectations, but you're having to deliver a slightly different product, because where before we would meet in ballrooms and there was all of this like super awesome loud music and there's lights and it's super exciting, there's screens or LED walls and maybe some entertainment around and all these pieces, and now we're kind of confined for the moment still to this 1920 by 1080 space. And it's
so true.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be sometimes, because you're just like, okay, well, how can I make this fun? How can I make this engaging? How can I make sure that we're focusing on the speakers and the story still? A lot of what Edge Factory does is we do that with graphics, with music, to a point. And I'll get back to that in a little bit. We want to make sure that we're pivoting our minds and we're not just coming at this as live events show callers. We want to come at this more so like broadcasts, like TV broadcasts. And so that's kind of what we started pivoting around to focus on. We started looking at a lot of shows on the TV, on cable, like how do they do things? So like they have this background, they have these pips, they have lower thirds, they have this, that, or the other. Like, okay, we've done that for years for our live shows. We can totally make this happen in this space, in this 1920 by 1080 space. And that's what we do, is we create these custom environments essentially where you're not just, it's not like, you know, just another Zoom meeting where everyone's kind of staring at each other and it's all like their random backgrounds or their dog, like my dog is chilling next to me currently. But it's taking that and putting maybe somebody in like a rhombus or a circle, and you have their logo around. They have like these different graphics. There's motion graphics. We'll do kind of like this right here. You'll have that background. We usually animate as much as we can, so we'll have a motion background. So there's something subtle to watch if you kind of have ADD like me and you zone out every once in a while. It's like, ooh, what's going on there? We have all these different pieces that we can work with, but we want to, again, like we have to make sure that it's serving a purpose. It's not just for funsies, for lack of a better word there. It's making sure that even those graphics are helping tell your story. What I love about music is it can really help drive that as well. We usually use it more so for intro pieces, similar to how we would do in live, except instead of having somebody walking on stage, obviously I'm not going to watch them walk on stage in virtual because we just cut camera. What we do instead is what I call an intro video. So it's very simple. We take like essentially their logo, we'll take a headshot, we'll add some music, most likely some VO, and like bam, you have this tiny cute little piece that introduces someone in a professional manner, and it takes everyone out of that moment of like, all right, we're just sitting here watching somebody or like listening to somebody talk for a little bit. It helps break up that monotony and brings in those graphics and helps keep driving that story forward. But it's tricky if you want to use underscore. I love using underscore because I think it really helps emphasize things if you have a really impactful moment. However, the human ear, whether you know it or not, the human ear is actually trained to pick up, unless you've trained yourself otherwise, it's trained to pick up human voices before anything else. So music and people speaking it's usually fighting when in this realm. And so we have to be very careful about how we level those out. And that definitely takes a whole lot of rehearsal. It's difficult sometimes because our speakers are just like gung ho and they're like, yeah, we're going. I'm like, the music's still too loud. You have to wait. So I give them little tips and tricks. I'm like, don't go until I say go, or like count to 5 in your head and then go ahead and start speaking. We really have to like handhold our speakers in this virtual realm, which is also a little bit different because in live, normally I get them maybe a couple hours before the show. They come on stage. We make sure that their microphone is working. They speak a few words. They make sure they're comfortable with their presentation. And then we send them on their way to the green room until they're ready to come on. In virtual, we have so many things that we have to make sure are going to be okay for the actual broadcast that it takes a little more preparation than at this point. I think most people get it, right? But especially at first, there's a lot of pushback of, well, why do we have to have a rehearsal? Well, why do we have to take up this person's time? And it was a lot of me having to understand that, right, with the text and make sure that I'm saying the right things, and then relaying that to the clients to let them know, in order to help drive this story forward for you, I need to make sure that your speaker is not going to all of a sudden drop out, or like they have some new piece of equipment that they want to try out day of show, and maybe it's not working and they have never come on with this before. So it's a whole, again, it goes back to, there's a lot of communication, a lot more preparation that goes into virtual show calling.
So I wanted to put a pin in that real quick, because you dropped out so much information on us already. One of the things that I already picked up was when you said that you had to learn a little bit about everything, because in order for you to maintain that communication with your clients, with the technicians, and also make sure that things happen as flawlessly as possible, obviously it takes a lot of communication ahead of time. But we did have some questions come in. And I definitely want to touch base on some of these. Disa was asking, can you tell us your thoughts on applause tracks?
Well, so applause tracks are interesting. I don't mind them always, as long as we are prepared for it and we know it's coming. And again, it's one of those, like, I pretty much have to work it into my show flow as a cue for me and for the speaker, and rehearse, and it still probably will like go a little bit wonky because not all of our speakers are trained to still wait for that go. So just use it with caution, because again, it's one of those things where there's competing elements, and we don't have control over our audience's hardware. We don't know what their speakers are going to do or not do. So it's just being careful with applause tracks. So use sparingly and intentfully. I don't think that's the word, but it is now.
I like it. We're going to run with it. I think it works. I think they understand exactly what you mean. Rico was saying that he said, somewhat it seems like virtual show calling seems a little bit more difficult. And honestly, from what you're saying, it seems like one of the things that you guys really focused was the user and experience. Yeah. How can you create an experience for them? So you said you definitely tap back into the cable TV side, and how can we create a broadcast like vision for them? So with this, when you look through all of this, you said, for us to make this happen, for us to create this experience, it's going to take a lot of these different pieces. So talk to me about the process of putting all of these pieces together, coming up with that pre-production, and then taking care of guys like Omar as to why he loves working with you. Because honestly, production can go so much smoother. Pre-production is done a lot, one, earlier, and two, if the communication there happens, a lot of times I feel like that's where the dropout happens. So talk to us about that process for you.
So that is definitely one of the biggest hurdles that we have had to overcome. And you nailed it right in the head, is like pre-production. It's great when it happens early on. And we don't always have that luxury of time, right? But it's one of those things where you want to have those conversations as a show caller. And hopefully if you're producing and show calling the show, that's even better. That's usually what I have the blessing to be able to do. You don't always have that luxury as a show caller. So you have to work very closely with whoever is your production manager or your producer, and understanding all of the pieces and how it's all supposed to be coming together. With that, you want to make sure that you not only understand the story, you understand the graphics, you understand what's supposed to come when. If this is like, I've gotten pieces that it's like, oh, we might use this, we might not. I'm like, that's great. Let me know if you actually want to use it, because if you're giving me the option, I'm going to use this and not that. And like, that's what's going to happen. But it's again, having all of those pieces, and I have to look at things. I kind of look at it as a roadmap. So my show flow, and to make sure that pre-production goes smoothly, I have to take a step back and look at the whole. I'm like, okay, this is where we're starting. This is where we need to be. These are all the pieces that we need in the middle to make sure that we can get there. And this is when I want it done. And this is when I have to have it done. And this is when I need to make sure that like the approvals are signed off on and graphics are good. And then we send it to this person and they make it animated and super fun. And then we add music. It's a whole process. So it's a lot of working backwards for me. And again, you definitely have to understand all of those pieces though, because otherwise you will miss something, and it can just kind of throw everything off. It's crazy what missing one graphic will do for your show sometimes.
This is so true. So true.
It's scary when you look at it and you're just like, okay, I've got this, I've got that, we're good, I've got this. Where's crap? And then you gotta like text somebody super late at night. You're like, hey, is there any way you can make this last minute thing for me? And it's you don't want to do that, but you have to definitely foster relationships. Fostering relationships is so important in everything that we do in events, but especially in virtual, because there's just no end. Our clients are almost working round the clock, and especially if they're all over the world. So I end up usually also working almost round the clock. I don't like my team to have to work round the clock. So I work really hard to make sure that everyone has all of the pieces that they need before it leaves my
nice.
perimeter, essentially. And I highly encourage everyone that's show calling, production management, project managing, anything that you can do to help your production teams or your tech teams, your creative teams, any information that you have, you are their source. You are their Bible. You are everything for them. So make sure that you understand this roadmap. Make sure that you understand. And if the roadmap changes, please let everyone know.
Oh, please.
Because it happens. We hope it doesn't. But
all the time. All the time.
I've had to do a whole overhaul on a show look and all of the pieces involved with it, and that's never fun. But yes, lots of laptops is right. So it's just making sure that you have a system worked out, and like you have a insane organization, and making sure that you know all the pieces and everything that's coming in and out. One of the things that I definitely love to do as well are thinking about little interactive pieces that maybe the client hasn't thought of, because there's the things that have to happen and then the things that we like to happen, right? So one of those pieces that was used in a show a couple months ago, they had this little game where the attendees had to look out for this little popcorn guy that would just kind of show up on screen throughout the presentation. We animated it so that it would come in at different like points and places, and the popcorn would just kind of go everywhere. It was super cute, super fun, and it helped audience engagement, because now they're not just listening to a presentation, they're not just watching, so whatever, even like the fun meetings that we do, it's not just another meeting. They have something that's keeping their attention, because when it pops up, they're like, ooh, that's where the popcorn guy is, and they have to, I don't know, like put in something or like fill out some bingo card or what have you. Things like that are super helpful. And you can do that with something fun. You can do that with something functional. If you want to do like little, like similar to the news, coming up next, we have blah, 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 Omar with whatever he's doing after this. Or you can have little trivia pieces, like a little pop-up graphic that's like, Austin is super awesome at doing, X, Y, and Z. Whatever makes sense to your show, whatever makes sense to the client, definitely come to the table with those. And if it's something that can be worked in, make sure that whoever's making those pieces knows, because you want to make sure that everything is still falling in line with the graphics that are being created. Because again, one of the things that can really take the story out of context really fast is if you have a bunch of a bunch of different graphics just all over the place. You want to make sure that you're keeping everything in the same line and keeping them engaged and just like immersed in that environment that you've created for them.
Nice. I love it. Which for me, in a sense, kind of goes back to project management, because you always want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. I don't know. Did you see this question from Dave? What tools do we regularly utilize to call virtual shows that you haven't used before in live event calling?
So it's a whole lot of, I used to print a lot of things and have scripts. Currently I have less scripting that I follow, and it's actually much more, we use show flows, but not in any way that's like normal, I guess. We essentially take an Excel sheet and we formatted it in such a way that we can see everything that's going on. So there's a column for me, for my element of what I'm calling. And then next to that is the vMix element. So for example, if I have Omar on a show, that's what Omar knows that needs to be programmed in there. If it's a full screen video, if it's like a live person, one up or whatever have you. So that's what goes in there. And then next we have audio, the audio column. So we let them know we have a playlist, or we have like, I use SOT, so sound on tape. If the video already has it built in, that way they know that's where that source is coming from. Or if it's something that they need to pull in, exactly which file that is. And then after that, we have a graphics column. That's kind of our standard. And then from there, we'll add columns to depending on whatever it is that we need. So I didn't really use that a whole lot in live, because again, I was more so following along with some scripts that I had from clients and just my own scripts as far as lighting cues and all of that jazz. But I actually will probably take these show flows the way that we have and reformat them once we get back into live shows, because it's been super helpful for keeping everything organized, and everyone knows, like once we have like a chat with them about how it's actually laid out, it makes complete sense of what is happening and why.
Got it. So I saw that Jay Thor had brought up a comment as well. He said for him, it would be Unity, and I've used the Unity app actually working for Jay Thor, which it's like comms, but everyone can utilize it through their phone. And it makes things super streamlined and easy for everyone to be in constant communication with each other when you need to be, especially offline. So I actually love using Unity as well. So earlier we had talked to some Disa had asked about the applause. I wanted to ask about something that's a little different. I know you said you kind of had a theater background. So theater, corporate, they don't really show too much of reaction shots. Talk to me a little bit about the difference, what you do in terms of maybe what reaction shots for when you're calling these virtual shows.
So that is a wonderful question. I will say up until now, a lot of my clients do not dig reaction shots, because they're like, why are we going to someone that's not talking right now? Like, just trust me for a second. It's fun. Like, look at, like, everyone's interacting. It's engaging. Like, the audience can see that it's okay to, like, smile or have fun. But it's been a lot of a conversation piece, and I've had to get the clients to see that it's okay to see someone else's reaction. I've tried to stay more so in panels to keep it safe for reaction shots, which can also go another way if somebody doesn't realize or forgets that we're in a panel and we can see them. So that's always fun as well. Sometimes you get reaction shots that you're not expecting, but it's definitely one of those things where it goes back to we're pivoting into more so that broadcast mentality, and we have to help our clients pivot with us, because at the end of the day, if I want to do something and I think it's super cool and I know it's going to look super cool for the audience, but the client is just not sold, I can't do it.
I have to make
sure. Yeah, I have to make sure that we're good with like what they want to see. And I'm starting to see the clients kind of mellow out and like, oh, that's really cool. Like recently we shot a panel, and we did actually include some reaction shots in that panel. I let her know ahead of time before she saw it. Hey, just so you know, we tried something new. We tried, but the editor kind of took this because this is one of those content handoff more so shows where it's not live. But we filmed it in such a way that we had some of those reaction shots in there. And I let her know, and she loved it. Absolutely loved it. So it's just having a conversation with your clients before you start throwing them in there.
Got you. I'll tell you this, and maybe that conversation doesn't happen as often as it should. I can't tell you what game it was, but I was watching basketball one time, and Shaquille O'Neal, you're watching him front and center, and he's wearing this really nice a beige suit with a crisp white shirt underneath, a purple striped silver tie, and he looked really sharp. And the camera just comes around right before they cut to commercial. And then when you see behind the desk, this nice beige jacket is being worn with like purple basketball shorts and Adidas flip-flops. And when you're seeing all of you, like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, but to be honest, I can't tell you what game I was watching, but I can tell you about that scene. So I feel like reaction shots definitely does add a whole lot of spark and interest to things too. So
absolutely. No, I could not agree with that more. It adds a little spice. And again, it takes it to that broadcast type feel. And especially if you're used to watching a game, you're definitely used to seeing like reactions. You're not only just watching the players, like, you know, do whatever they're doing. You're looking around in the crowd and
the kiss cam, all of that good stuff. Yeah, definitely.
I do have some clients that do what they like to call the Zoom looking, where we'll have the fees coming in from where the audience is and somebody's interacting with them, be it a DJ or what have you, and we'll put them on screen and they get so excited to see themselves on screen. So those are fun, like little, it's a piece that is intentional for that moment. So a lot of my clients it's easier to get reaction shots out of that. But again, it's one of those engagement pieces that could be really fun for your audience.
Nice. I love it. Omar, we got a lot of engagement coming in from the community.
We do.
Let's get some people involved.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to go in order here, and that is honestly, this has been amazing, super insightful, super knowledgeable. Honestly, when you first went, I was about to say before Austin says, I was like, hey, thanks for being here, guys. That's a wrap. We're done. You gave out all these golden nuggets. The chat's got golden nuggets coming out of it right now between Jay Thor and AV Trainer and Sean. Like they're just dropping these nuggets left and right for the community. I'm loving it. So the one that I got here that I wanted to bring up real quick is from Sean Michael Newman, and he asks, as we all know, rehearsals can be minutes before show. As an example, what is an elegant way of steering the client to avoid? And I feel like this would be great for you, right? What is an elegant way of steering the client to avoid a production fail possibility on the fly without telling them it's not possible?
Oh, man.
This is like an Edge Factory special.
It really is. It's because my clients are used to spoiling them, and we will spoil them to the ends of the earth as long as it's not going to potentially fail your show, right? So if I have any way of trying to make it happen, I'll usually go a compromise route first of, hey, can we pull this off? Or, hey, can we pull in this video? Yeah, sure. Or maybe it's one of those things where it's not at that moment, but I can compromise and like, if you really want to do this, we can do this, but it's going to be a little bit later in the show. Let's put it here instead of there. Again, it's knowing that you have to know your show in and out, and know where you can make some adjustments to be able to be a little bit more flexible. If it's really something that's just, it's absolutely not going to work, and I have a concern about it just kind of taking a show down, that's definitely a different conversation where I'll probably have to hop on a phone call with them and kind of do what I call my Disney voice, as far as, I hear you, I understand, I love that you're thinking about this, but we have to look at this, unfortunately, realistically right now. It's just not going to be possible. We might be able to maybe add this in post. Adding something in post, because a lot of our clients like their shows to be recorded, and so that it has a shelf life, it can live on afterwards. Adding something in post is usually my go-to if I absolutely cannot execute it for the live portion of the show. That way we can still kind of accommodate, but it's not gonna like just sink the show potentially at that moment.
Agreed.
I like that. So there's another one I had come in here, and Austin, I apologize. I'm just gonna take it real quick. Just so the community knows, by the way, it's 8:38 right now. We end at 9 o'clock. We try to end it on time. You guys are coming with tons of questions. If we don't get to them, we will have Loda put them in. We'll get to these in the comments in the group page of the events. So you guys get answers to them, and she'll answer them after the show. We will try to get to all these today, but just, we have less, 25, 28 minutes. But moving on, I'm wasting time by talking again. So the next one I have is from AV Trainer here, right? And he's asking here, how do you connect best with both crew and talent to make sure everything actually happens in sync when no one is in the same room or even the same continent? Which this leads me to another question after this, but we'll get there. But technically, and in terms of team structure and management, both technically and in team structures, I apologize.
So this actually just goes right back to open, honest communication, frequent communication. My brain is almost constantly split between these two realms that have to work together. It's making sure that my crew has all of their information, and I'm making sure that I have time set aside to talk to them, to get with them ahead of time. Omar mentioned I'll come in the day before, and I'll just make sure that he has at least a framework of what is going on, as much as I know. I don't always know. That's a fun one. But as much knowledge as I know, Omar will know. Anybody else that's working with us will know, because I want to make sure that our team is solid. It's a very different realm here, where I have to, because our clients are coming into the back room with us, and they are living essentially with the techs. Sometimes I have to deal with the client thing, and I can't always necessarily be on top of every single cue. I do my best, but every once in a while I might need Omar to take a cue for me, and that's where that show flow comes in, that making sure everybody understands the book, making sure everybody knows what's going on, what needs to happen when. I highly stress internal rehearsals to make sure that we all have our game plan on point before we ever get on with the client itself.
Right there, that what you just said right there is the key towards success when it comes showtime. You just said. I hope everyone takes notes, retains that information, and remembers that, because that right there is how you come up with a solution to having as close to a flawless show as possible. I love it.
So 38 to 40 minute mark, guys, on the replays where you want to watch. If you didn't take notes, make sure you're right. 38 to 41 minutes in my replays. I need to listen.
Seriously.
No, so to continue with that, though, the talent on the other side, I don't always have direct access to the talent until we get on with rehearsal, because I work a lot with what I call a direct client, and then there's an end client. The talent is usually part of the end client. So it makes it a little difficult for me, because I have to send information, and I send a bunch of information, and it's sometimes information overload, but it's one of those things where I want to make sure that the talent knows as much of what I need them to do beforehand before they get on with me. And then I have to make sure that I know exactly what they're doing, when they're doing it, how they're doing it, because they probably didn't read what I sent them. So we're going to have to take some time and do a tech check. There have been moments where some of our talent won't want to do a tech check because they've done a million Zoom calls or they've done a million Teams calls or what have you. It's not the same. So I definitely will stress, please, at the very least, have them on for a quick tech check to make sure that you can just kind of blaze information at them, because I've had to talk really fast sometimes. I'm just like, hello, welcome. Okay, so like your camera's looking great. I can hear you. Your lighting's looking pretty good. Yeah, maybe don't sit in front of that window, or like don't sit. Yeah, no, let's just adjust a little bit. Okay, excellent. Are you on Wi-Fi? Or are you on hardwired? Nope, you're on Wi-Fi. Okay, just make sure all of your other devices are off for that day. And so I have your presentation. Do you want us to click through it, or do you want to click through it, and blah, blah, blah. And like, it's just going. But I can only do that if I know exactly what is happening with that particular speaker. When it comes to the actual rehearsal show days, it's the same thing. I need to make sure that I am the driving force, the glue that's holding these teams together, and making sure that everyone is essentially playing nice and everything's moving forward. We can't have anyone just doing anything like kind of on their own or not paying attention. It's one of those things where everyone has to be on their game, and a lot of our speakers are cognizant of that, and so are the tech teams. So I haven't, thankfully, I haven't really had situations where anybody's fighting me too much on anything that we've asked them to do. But it's definitely, again, it goes back to organization and communication. Over communicate the things to, especially the speakers, because they don't always understand. And especially bringing them into a different platform. This is not a regular Zoom platform. You're coming into a broadcast scenario. There's a whole different ball game of how we can control things. And for the love of God, please don't touch your own mute button, because I can't unmute your computer.
Tell me about it. Oh my gosh, that is the biggest pain in the butt. I swear. And then when you're working with, like, why didn't you unmute them? Because I'm not in the house with them.
Like, I asked them not to. I don't know. It happens. And I had one speaker, she's a pro at it. So she would mute herself, but unmute herself right before. But I had this like pit in my stomach the entire show. So I was like, she's going to forget, she's going to talk. No sound is going to come out. Everyone's going to be like, oh, well, that was Laura. I'm like, no.
I know just what you mean, and I even know about the getting dealt with the talent ahead of time, because I've had rehearsals, so to speak, with speakers, and we'll get set up. I'm like, great, they got their laptop all propped up on some books, make sure they got the adequate height, correct headroom, good lighting, all this good stuff. We're actually in showtime right now, 5 minutes before they go on stage. I'm at my neighbor's house. Shot looks completely different. The Wi-Fi went down in my house. I'm like, all right, cool, let's get this done. So I know about the rapid talking, trying to get the shot as quick as you possibly can. All too well.
It's a scary time sometimes. It's like, okay, we're doing it.
Exactly. We'll make it work. So Sean brought up another great question too. He was asking, what are your standard methods of sharing workload if you're in the mire with talent, for example?
So it's going to depend on how this talent is coming to us, right? So again, I work with a lot of my direct clients. I work with a lot of event planners. So they do some of the hand holding themselves. There are certain things that I can also bring in a producer if they have a little more experience with dealing with a certain kind of presentation or presenter, or they have something like super weird going on and I'm not entirely sure how to actually execute this well. I'll bring in, phone a friend. I will bring in somebody that actually knows a little bit better than me to help me walk through that, because I don't ever want any of our talent to feel like unsteady about working with us or working with me or anything or any of my crews. But as far as like, yeah, sharing that workload, it's either sideways, one of our techs that maybe has a little more knowledge in that, or upwards. I don't necessarily, so I have a couple of project coordinators that I usually work with on anything, but I tend to keep them closer to the production side as far as graphics and making sure that all these other pieces that we need for the show are happening. Talent, I usually take myself personally. I can't say that that's going to be everyone, but as a performer myself, I usually can relate to them very well. So I usually take that on me personally.
So I want to backtrack real quick here because we were talking about this one topic and I felt like it fit right into something else we wanted to talk about, because I know for me and Austin, for example, for these shows we got people in Singapore right now, and I couldn't even tell you top of my mind what the hours that time zone for that is. Mm-hmm. And then between the AV Tech Talks and the people we bring from that from all over the world, Dave brings up a very good question, Laura, and I have to admit, I don't think I ever have to think about this with you guys. So I'm assuming you guys are doing this behind the scenes, and it's never dawned on me, right? Like, oh shit. So Dave asked in particular, how do you manage time zones? Do you write your show flows with all text local times? Or, here we go. Or have everyone adjusted their clocks to their client or main audience restrictions? Now, I will say, from my experience, from my point of view, I have never seen you send me anything other than what's in my time zone.
Yes, that's on purpose. It's so that you don't have to do the math. It, again, goes back to
Keep it simple.
I stress myself out so that other people don't have to stress, essentially. So it really will depend, again, on the client and how many. I've had speakers all over the place before, but anything that I'm giving to our crews, I make sure is in our time zone. Or if it's somebody, for whatever reason, if I'm working with somebody, for example, like on the West Coast, Pacific time, I'll make sure anything I send to them is in Pacific time. If I'm working with a speaker that they are in England, I'll make sure that whatever math I have to do to make sure that I'm sending them their time in their time zone, that's what is happening. Because I want to make sure that A, I know what's happening, and B, I don't accidentally give them East Coast time. They interpret it as 3 p.m. their time. 3 p.m. in England is very different from 3 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States of America. And that's never a good time. I want to make sure that I am always very cognizant of not taking up people's time or taking up too much of their time. And so definitely with time zones, I'm working probably overtime to make sure that everyone understands what's happening within their actual time zone. Yes.
Yeah, so I'll keep going here. There's a bunch of questions I'm trying to play catch up on. Thanks to your AV trainer for correcting me the time frame. I knew it was somewhere around the time frame. So I'm gonna go back up here. We got AV trainer, we got Dave, got some Unicom, got Pete. There was one I'm looking for. Google Sheets, AV trainer, Skype voice call. So we did manage time zones, right? Then great question. And then we had some answers about that, right? Rehearsal. Okay, so here it is. AV trainer, and I think we kind of touched on this one a little bit, but I'll go over it again. If rehearsal is minutes before show, is it still a rehearsal? Seems like that's just a last minute tech check off.
Correct. Yep. That's exactly what that is. If it's not at least the day before or several hours before show, I don't call that a rehearsal.
It's a box on the checklist. That's it.
Yep. That's it. You're in, don't leave. That's
exactly.
I like Sue's comment here. Sometimes corporations have troubles trying the spice. I like that.
That is absolutely accurate. It's definitely it's something I continuously work towards getting them to explore something different. They don't always want to explore right away, so you just kind of have to like, I really want to try this, and they're like, absolutely not. I'm like, cool. Can we try this? Like, is there a baby version of it? And you're like, maybe. So it starts small. Let them know where you want to go, because if you, I don't want to say it like in a weird way, but if you freak them out a little bit, but then bring it down and give them like a bite-sized version of that, and they love it, then they'll be curious as to, oh, well, she mentioned this initially. Like, what if we tried going more towards that, or like trying this out a little bit more. You gotta work it up with them, but let them know where you want to go.
So there's one here that I have. So there's something that we had put in the description of the show, right? And David Brady, reaction shots only work if the audience is engaged in the event. So a killer show is super important. And you had worded something here about graphics. Graphics, let them drive the story.
Yes.
Can you kind of like touch on that? I feel like David's saying, when we're on a live show, I have the ability to take a crowd shot, right? Of people engaging, being interactive with the audience, and I have the ability to switch between that and what's going on stage, and it might be something entertaining. And in virtual, I don't really have the audience participation the way I want it to, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this, right? It's typically, right, because it's a bunch of us on a Zoom call. It's this, and some guys, listening, but he's like this. Like the entire time, right? Or like he's like this and he's over here, and like the whole show going on. So to his point, right? You guys are extremely good at creating this content that's engaging and brings you into it. And there's always like some kind of backgrounds that are moving or that are very graphical with different kind of pips and sizes. And we have multiple presets that we make for different kind of looks for different presenters. Can you talk about how you guys essentially create that look, right? But like you're saying, graphics, let them tell the story. How you guys, I guess, in the pre-production see and envision that stuff that you do for the community when you're creating this content. It's because, like you said earlier, right, we are now in a 16:9 box, and that's what the content is, and that's what it needs to drive the audience and the audience to engage, right? And we're not shooting a film, right? We're not doing a production where you're watching the storyline. You're still doing a presentation that needs to have a storyline vibe to it, right? So we're going from live theater, right, is what we're doing, to now we're in the production side, but we're not making a movie. So how do I get, and like you're saying, with that Zoom call, like this isn't the best camera in the world, right? Your guys' cameras are good. But I don't have a DP saying, hey, lighting over here, get a little bit of shade here, get a little bit of light over there, put a backlight. Like I don't have that every time. So you guys are using the content, the client's logos, the client's information, their name. You're creating these looks, right, to engage the audience. Can you explain to me that process you guys kind of go through when it comes to
create a storyline?
Correct.
Yes. So it is probably a little more simple than anyone is thinking. It's obviously you have to know the storyline, but B, at the very minimum, change up what's on the screen. Like you don't want to just have one person talking for a while. Like yes, we put them in pips, we put them like there's a motion background, there's all this fun stuff that's happening on the screen. But even that, like human attention span, it's just natural. At some point you're going to be like, all right, that's fine. Like I've already seen it. So go from a panel to a 2-shot, or a panel to a 1-shot, and then back to a panel, and then back to this, and then takes a graphic full screen real quick. Take a little video break. Do something with graphics, like I was mentioning earlier. Make sure that you have graphics that you can just pop up on screen like little bugs. That's like, hey guys, don't forget about me. I'm over here. Now I'm over here. Now there's bingo over there. I don't know. Something like fun that can engage your audience that way. If you have, some clients actually have really fun, engaged audiences. It doesn't always happen, but I have actually seen it, and it's super fun and cool. If you plan it ahead of time, you can actually bring in some of those shots, incorporate it into what you have on screen. So you'll have your normal presenters on screen, then maybe they're presenting an award, and then you can bring in that Zoom shot and you can have them both on screen at the same time. And it's like they're all there, like they're all doing something fun. And it's easy to do as long as you know to do it and you have it programmed, because that's the one difficult part about this, is that if you don't think about it ahead of time, I can't just pull a new pip out of my booty and just like execute it in show, right? It has to be planned, it has to be designed, it has to be like all these pieces have to actually work together. A really cool thing that we did once was one of the presenters for our shows was talking about a story, and she had a video going on. So she was originally just going to play this video full screen. It had no sound on it because she was telling her story. It's just a visual, like an infographic. They wanted to do something where maybe it was her, but still having the video full screen, which we don't normally do. We normally will have like a person in a person here and the pip with the video here. So they're still both on screen, but like other things are going on. So we actually created a different little baby pip that was just for her face, essentially. So we get her in the actual video, and now it looks like she's kind of traveling with the video and like she's telling her story inside this video. It was super cool. And we're still doing this within the confines of this 1920 by 1080 world where we can't just actually physically put her in this. She doesn't have a green screen or anything like that. But it's helping, it's using those graphics to still tell that story in a fun, meaningful way. You have to sometimes think outside of the box, but it's a lot simpler than like anything super extravagant. It's literally just like come up with a game. I had another client that their host, every time she would come on screen, she did actually do a green screen background. Every time she came on screen, it was a different background. And there was a slight different placement of some ornaments. So the game there was that the audience, if they were looking and they were paying attention, they had to write down like what new ornament was on screen for like this section of what have you. And there were usually prizes at the end. Obviously, I can't force anybody to offer prizes, but it is something like have some kind of incentive for people to actually be engaged and do something fun with the graphics. It's so easy to do. It's mind blowing how much you can actually add in and not have to like do anything super crazy or like, I don't know, come up with a whole storyline for it that's separate from what you already have.
So it seems like it's more so about you being engaged with your client ahead of time, figuring out what their story is, what story they're trying to tell, and how you can add on to that or make their story a little bit better, or just make sure that it comes through. Am I getting that correct?
That is exactly it. Yeah.
And it's, whatever little nuances and things that you can add on to it to make it what it needs to be.
What they let me do, yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you start big and you're like, okay, well, can we get this? I like it. So one of the last things, I know we probably have 1 or 2 minutes left, but since we're here, I want to ask you 2 last questions. My very first one is, one of the last things that you mentioned is never fade to black. Touch on that for me really quickly.
Oh, man. So in this realm, normally, and any gamer or like computer person will probably tell you the same, if your screen all of a sudden goes to black, there's nothing happening, you assume that it broke. Like something went wrong, something's weird. You're about to get that, like, I don't know, blue screen of death, and you're just like, oh my goodness, like what is happening? So I strongly advise against fading to black at the end of a show. I will occasionally do it in an opening video if it goes with the music. Like if the music hits at like this point, you have music, the graphics are going, black frame, and then we go explode into some like color or something like that. That's with purpose. It's like hot second with music, and that's fine. If it's at the end of a segment or at the end of the show, just go to some kind of show look, some kind of thank you, some kind of slide, and play some music so that your audience doesn't think that your show just ended and died. You want to make sure you give it a bookend, because we can't just turn the lights up in the ballroom and bye. No, give them something to know that.
Understood. Understood. And my last question is, I think that the entire community has been heavily engaged with you tonight. There's been tons of questions. And by the way, you probably have some homework to do to answer more questions after this. However, can you leave the community with some closing thoughts about your pivot and your transition from live events to virtual show calling? How they can get better? What are some tips and tricks and advice that you can give them into becoming better show callers if they want to become show callers, or even just interacting and engaging with their clients as to how they can make their overall virtual shows better?
Whew, okay. I'll try not to take up too much time.
Whole bunch of it, huh?
Well, no, I first of all, I'm so honored and so blessed to have spent this time with all of you today. I'm more than happy to answer questions afterwards. I will say, show calling, it seems weird. It seems a lot. It's just a lot of organization and communication. And at the end of the day, as long as you are able to collaborate, make sure that you have solid teams working with you, make sure you're working on those relationships with people that you're working with or somebody new that you're working with. Those relationships are going to help carry you when you're not entirely sure how to actually proceed with something. I know a lot because at this point I've been now doing these virtual shows almost exclusively for a year. And it was scary at first because I know how to I'm magic to do show calling in the theater and like live things is one thing and it's beautiful and it's magical. Virtual show calling has its own magic. So don't be afraid of it. Just really dig in there and find your story. Make sure that you're carrying that story through. Look at other pieces that have been made. Look at other broadcasts. It's okay to borrow some of those ideas and bring it to your client because at the end of the day, you can take that and make it something your own, make it something special because you're not going to copy and paste from someone else. You can make it like if somebody has brought up some kind of, I don't know, some crazy thing that uses leprechauns coming on screen, take that idea and see how you can mold it to what you have going on with your clients. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I ask for help constantly from my peers, from people that I know and trust, from my mentors, from Omar, like whoever you need that you know and trust that will have some kind of answer or knows how to get that answer. Don't be afraid to reach out. I am happy to also be a resource for everyone today. That's probably a lot, but I love helping people, and there is no community that works without extensive teamwork, and we're all in this together. We're all going through like the same kind of things. So the best advice I can really give is just study what other people do. Look at how they organize their information and talk to your techs. My show flows have evolved, like I think show to show almost, because I want to make sure that I know what's happening, but I'm tailoring it to the person that's actually also going to be using it. Because at the end of the day, again, we're all a team. And I want to make sure that like if there's something that maybe I write it this way and it makes more sense to write it that way instead, maybe I didn't think about that before. And I carry that to the next show and the next show and the next show. We're always evolving. So don't be afraid of that. It just like get in there. Be awesome.
Awesome.
So real quick, I want to jump in, Lada, before we let you go for the night. I just want to let you know the community has heard you. They love what they're hearing from you. I just want to share what some of these guys are saying about you. And I'll start from the top. Frank Torres said, she's amazing, Omar. We had, Sean Michael said, great job, Lada. He loved what he heard from you. Pete, same thing. Lada has some good points for everything. Rio Campos, he said, I made it to 9 a little longer than I wanted. She did great. So apparently he stuck around. He's going to, I guess, just drop in.
Yeah, Rico, that kind of tells us how you feel about us, but I'm just saying.
Hey, he was showing love. AV Trainer here tonight said, excellent, another excellent chat, sparkling lights with a hint of citrus. I like that a lot. Jasmine Lee, thanks everyone for pulling all this together. Hearing from Lada is a great way to start the day. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to let you know, tonight was awesome. You did great. You spoke well. You elaborated a ton of information. The community got tons of golden nuggets. The community was chatting amongst themselves and giving other nuggets out there between Jay Thor and Sean and Dave and Rico and AV Trainer. They were all chatting about stuff as you were going. And I know I'm missing some names right now, so I'm going to go through this real quick. I miss Sue was in there as well, chatting up. Alan Pizza was in there. He let us know he was a little bit early. Thank you all for being here so much. Sue had a couple of those bombs she dropped in there were great. The spice, right? The spice of life.
Yeah.
I'm excited about Dune coming out. Sorry, but the spice coming out, right? So again, Lada, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. This was amazing. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your love and your wisdom with the community so much. I was looking forward to working with you on Friday. Austin, I will leave this show to you, brother, to wrap it up. Unless you want to ask me anything before I let you do your thing.
No, sir. I think that she did a phenomenal job with everything that she dropped. So let's just close it up because we look to spoil it and take it even any further. So actually, I love this comment that you just brought up from Jose. He said, "Amazing. One thing he loves is that she points out to use your resources. You don't have to know everything." That is actually one of the same gems and nuggets that I picked up from tonight. One, the pivots and how they made. The pivots and seeing how things were already done. They did their R&D. Sometimes it's research and development. Sometimes it's rip off and duplicate. They saw what was happening in terms of broadcast. They saw how they can make things better for their end clients. These type of pivots. Now, when it came time for her to perform, she went ahead and she tapped into the knowledge of her peers around her. She made sure that she prepped ahead of time, prepped as much as she possibly could. With any more updates that were needed, they were always brought to the table, and effective communication was always maintained between herself, her teams, and her clients, whether they were the technicians that she was working with or the full production team. But regardless of the fact of the matter, there was so much gems that you guys could have picked up tonight. I suggested you grab your notebooks, grab your pen and paper, rewatch this entire thing, and take some notes because there was a lot of great information that was passed on here tonight. If show calling is something that you are looking to get into, Laura has actually given us the permission to share her email. So we'll leave that in the chats for you as well if you guys want to get in touch with Laura if you have any future questions to ask. There's nothing more I can say. She did a phenomenal job tonight, and I look forward to speaking with you guys again next week. Take care.